I am Colin Krosgoff. I chose to study and present Norman Borlaug. The biography that I chose to read about Norman Borlaug is called The Man Who Fed the World by Leon Hesser. Leon Hesser earned bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees in agricultural economics at Purdue University with emphasis on international agriculture. Norman Borlaug's expertise and innovative mindset helped change agriculture internationally. Although he is not a household name to most, he changed the world and sparked what is known as the Green Revolution. Norman Borlaug was born to Henry Oliver and Clara Borlaug on March 25th, 1914 in Cresco, Iowa. He was lighthearted and always curious about Mother Nature. In those days, most boys dropped out of school to work on the farm, but Norman's grandpa knew that an education provides the tools to make change happen and encouraged Norman to make school a priority. When Norman was a teenager, he was involved in sports and worked on the 100-acre family farm. Norman was involved in football, wrestling, and baseball. He gained great advice from his high school wrestling coach and took it to heart. Lessons explained in The Man Who Fed the World book about hard work, passion, and always giving 105%. At age 19, Norman saw real hunger for the first time. While visiting Minneapolis, Minnesota, grown men begged him for money. Norman watched a riot break out where milk was spilled in the streets as a protest to low food prices. Hungry people raced past him, trying to take anything they could. Borlaug was affected a lot by the scene. He was convinced that extreme hunger had more than just the stomach in its control, but it strongly influenced the mind. Borlaug would go on to earn a Master's of Science degree in 1940 and a PhD in plant pathology and genetics in 1942 at the University of Minnesota. While at the University of Minnesota, Norman met his wife while working at a coffee shop. They got married in 1937 and went on to have 3 kids. After graduating school, Borlaug spent 2 years working within the forestry industry and decided to move to Mexico to help farmers better grow their crops and increase their yields. When Borlaug arrived, he found diseases destroying the wheat fields. Yields were low, and farmers could barely feed their families. Each starving person grew Borlaug's compassion. In a quote from The Man Who Fed the World, Borlaug wrote his wife, "These places I've seen have reshaped my mind. I don't know what we can do to help these people, but I must do something." End quote. It was hard for anyone to see a future for Mexico to be self-sufficient enough to grow their own wheat, and Borlaug was questioning if he had made a mistake in coming there. This did not tamper Norman's goals, and his team stayed focused on solving the task at hand. Borlaug was restless until he found a solution to the problem. Up at the crack of dawn, trying to cure the rust disease that was widespread. Through plant breeding, Borlaug's team needed to increase yields and introduce wheat varieties that were immune to the diseases. Borlaug's task as a plant breeder was to find a line resistant to the disease, cross it with varieties that easily adapted to the local environment, and select the resisted lines. In 3 short years, Borlaug and his team accomplished this. In addition to being resistant to diseases, the new varieties were highly susceptible to fertilizer. This allowed yields to skyrocket. With this success, the wheat plants became top-heavy and the stalks would collapse from the weight of the grain. Yields would suffer yet again because of this. Who knew great success could lead to failure? Borlaug and his team stayed determined. This all led to the creation of semi-dwarf wheat. These wheat plants grew stronger and shorter, which allowed the stalk to uphold high-yielding grain. As explained in the biography book, The Man Who Fed the World, it explained that semi-dwarf wheat was first introduced in Japan after World War II. That strain was later sent to the United States, where Borlaug was able to introduce it to his varieties in Mexico. By introducing the semi-dwarf variety to his plants in Mexico, it solved the weak stalk issues that they once had. This combination of wheat genetics was called the miracle seed. What once seemed impossible, 15 years later, Mexico was able to become self-sufficient in wheat production in 1956. In 1963, Mexico had enough of a supply that they were able to export and help the rest of the world, as stated in The Man Who Fed the World. Borlaug expanded his visions to India and Pakistan, drastically increasing their wheat productions as well. These dramatic improvements in food production was known as the Green Revolution. A direct quote from Borlaug from the book The Man Who Fed the World said, "When the wheat was mature and grown properly, the wind blowing across the field, you could hear the beards of the wheat rubbing together. It was like whispering music that once you heard, you would never forget." End quote. Borlaug's work was a symbol of the importance of agriculture worldwide. In 1970, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts. He received this because he had helped provide bread for all of those who were hungry in the entire world. Through Borlaug's expertise in plant breeding, he left the world a better place than when he found it. Once a young boy on a farm in a small town in Iowa, pushed to learn more by his grandfather, to a pioneer that fed the world. Norman Borlaug is a true story of a real superhero.